time. I had a job actually. Right after that, I got offered a job, the last real day job I had, in 90. I guess it was 97 through 99, I think. Um, at that time, I was a huge fan of Macintosh computers, and
Uh-huh.
so I had a friend who worked at HP, no, at Martin Marietta, and his daughter was working at this call center that had just started, and so she kept calling me and said, "Hey, we need somebody who can do Macintoshes." And I said, "Well, okay, I'm still doing the art thing." And so she said, "No, no, no, go see these people." So I went to see these people, and it was in fact Aon. It was a contract that Aon had bought from General Electric, and what it was Circuit City's computer repair support hotline for Circuit City. So if you bought a computer from Circuit City, then you called to get your computer fixed. So um, Aon had this huge contract, and so I went to see these people, and they offered me the job to set up the department. So I took that, and over on Denver West, in the Aon building where the big fountain is, just on the west side of the highway, I set up a computer support department, and
Did you really?
for Macintosh, and the great sort of I mean, because I just love Macs, and and the great benefit of that job was I discovered pretty early on was that all the creative people in the country had Macs at the time. So I'm getting calls from people in Hollywood. I became very good friends with a number of people over the phone because I fixed their computer, and I got to meet theatrical types, Broadway producers, film people, special effects people. Let's see who,
Ah, interesting.
and let's see the drummer from, let's see who which one it was. Was it the Lovin' Spoonful? Can't remember. One
Uh-huh.
one of those bands anyway. He was a big Mac guy, so he called in like once a week just to chat. So so I built this department. It was wonderful because um, I just got to meet all these people, and then I had Mac people hanging around all the time, and everybody else went to work in suits and ties, or at least business dress, and we were the renegades. We were the people who they left alone because it went from when I went there were about 25 people or so, I guess. And I built up this Mac department. We had, I think, 13, 15 people, something like that, at its greatest reign. But the PC side went from like 20 up to 900.
Oh, my word.
So there were 900 PC people. And this went on for a year and a half. And so I was living in Evergreen, so I just, up and down the road, and it was great. Just commuted and had a fine old time, and used to go to I would go to NCAR for the Mac people had a gathering of the loyal once a month, and I would go to that. And so the curious thing was, I get there was not when I went there, there wasn't a Macintosh in the building, and so we operated uh, for the first, I don't know, I think it was probably 4 or 5 months before we actually had a Mac in there, and
Really?
because we all did it from memory. I mean, we could do all this stuff from because I just hired real Mac heads, and so we would fix people's computers just without having one. And there were like 7 models or something like that, but because we'd all been so Mac fanatics, we knew all about them. So anyway,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
grand and fun job.
I
I
bet it was.
I really
Both
did.
of my computer guys, Andrew Chan, who's in Denver, and then
Mm,
a man named Ken Gathings down here, they both love Macs, and that's what
yeah,
they do.
right.
They're always trying to convince me to switch to a Mac, but I just don't know that I want to learn everything again.
You know, and even me being an ultra Mac fan,
Uh-huh.
I switched to PCs around 2002, I guess it was, because Macs wouldn't run voice recognition technology, and they wouldn't do all the things that were written for like Photoshop and stuff. So regrettably, I switched over to PCs and still am, because they're a lot cheaper, and B, they do stuff that PCs can't. I mean, that Macs can't do. So, but alas, and it used to be that Macs were the dominion of video editing, but now it's
Right. That's
now,
what I heard. That,
yeah,
anything artistic or,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
It's a much more balanced
photography,
playing field.
related, that they were so much superior.
Right, right, yeah. So anyway, that was another adventure that I really enjoyed and had a fine old time doing, and got to meet lots and lots of people who.
Oh, that,
And I have a friend who that he was the guy I would, because I dispatched people all over the country to go and fix people's computers. So I had a friend in L.A., a phone friend. A guy who I had worked with for, it was 14 months before I'd worked with him every day for 14 months, on the phone, before he actually was able to come to Colorado. I met him in person, and yeah, it's remarkable how you can develop these this intimacy with somebody you're working with. Uh,
right.
and like I say, I'd never laid eyes on him, never seen a picture of him, nothing. So it was quite remarkable that he
Oh, that's neat.
to be able to do that. So yeah, a lot of fun. So and then so those are some more of the adventures that have come my way, and then
Well, you're very creative.
well, on a professional level, I feel like I'm really well equipped. I haven't bought a piece of computer equipment for like a year now, because I have everything imaginable that I would ever want, that I thought I would ever want. So I don't. For a change, I have everything I need, and I've been just using what I have. So, um, so that's great, because I have all this amazing toolkit of stuff that I can use, and so hooray! I've been waiting 30 years for it to get good enough to do all that stuff, and now it has. So, and everybody has access to that now, because the stuff is so remarkably cheap. So hooray for everybody in that sense.
Yeah, it does get cheaper and cheaper.
It does. And so, but anyway, that be all that as it may, it doesn't. That's only a part of life, as we know. So, but I'm quite satisfied that that everything's available. Yeah, there's really very little no impediments really. Keep ragging on about that, but it's true. It's like now it has to do with forging important personal alliances and all of that. So,
Well, that's neat. What made you decide to change course there?
um, well, let's just look at the evolution of all this, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like in the past, for example, um, over time, I've just sort of serendipitously lived through relationships, and have never really assessed as to what I need or what I want, and so um, but I've had like you've been married what, 3 times, and
Yeah.
I've been de facto married for you know essentially periods of time which would constitute about the same,
Right.
because I am in no way a relationship hopper, as someone might say. um, I was with Phyllis for 6 years, and after Phyllis I was with Anne for 5 years, I guess. So there's 11 years,
Right.
um, and then with a gap, and so then in the last 2 years, um, I have sort of made myself um, I guess, a technological monk in some odd way, I guess. Living here at the monastery, in the farm monastery, just toiling the soil and, harvesting the crops and, making sure the roof was mended on the castle and all that. So,
Well, I think you've been wonderful to come to the aid of your father.
well, it only made sense. It just does. I did hear a statistic today, I think it was this morning on the radio somewhere, that 1 in 5 Americans, so said the radio, are engaged in the care of a family member.
Yeah.
Now that sounds like quite a high number, but in practice probably it's not. You know.
I think it'll probably get, larger as the big baby boom.
By all means, yeah.
Goes through,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and especially, I read a thing the other day with so many people losing so much in the stock market that they'll be working forever or living with their children, or that there will be a lot of people who just don't have enough money to retire.
Hey, look, not only are now kids going to move home from college, but now elderly parents will be moving home or back to your house because they have nowhere else to go and can't afford it and can't afford $5,000 a month for assisted living and all that. So, boy, I think that's it's going to be a trend which no one anticipated, but a real
No,
one,
either. Well,
So,
until my parents died, and Dad died in 2006,
yeah,
I felt, very much, sort of the strain of the sandwich generation.
Right.
I was, still putting my kids through school
right,
and flying to Florida all the time to see my dad.
yeah,
And you feel that obligation, and, you want to, be a good parent and be a good child, and it's, it is an obligation, no question about it.
and
But
and since we don't live in these huge, we don't have these, half a dozen siblings to share
that's
the
right.
load. I mean, this is a consequence which, if you narrow down to the people who actually are willing or able to do support of elderly family members, it's it's a pretty small fraction of people who can even mobilize when called upon. But that's what we do because we're built that way, and
Well, I think we should be built that way.
we should be built that way, and
Yeah.
we're just not quite set up for the fact that the rest of the tribe's not there. So
Yeah, and our tribes get smaller.
yeah. So I mean, we Dad was in hospice for a year, and those people were absolutely great. They were superb. They were just wonderful. We had um, PTs and music therapists, and they just mobilized an army of delightful people. A padre and everybody else. They became great friends, but they were so and all of them were so glad whenever there's a chance to kick somebody out of their program. It's like, oh, good, there's one that actually doesn't need our services anymore. So that was they felt good about that. They felt like they'd accomplished something. So, but
Well,
yeah.
they obviously got him to a point, where he could be more independent.
Yeah, he recovered so dramatically, and that was now that's almost 4 years ago. So, but given all that, it's now. I want to live like I was 15 years younger than I am biologically, and
Well, I think we are 15 years younger than what used to be biologically.
right, yeah,
I really do.
Right.
Through lifestyle and the way we've feel about exercise
Yeah.
and nutrition, and people just are living longer, and are biologically a lot younger.
Right. Yay! Hooray! Yes.
Hooray! Could cause problems down the
Right.
road,
Right. Yeah.
but who knows? It's
Well, what we do know is that those who have the money will be able to buy the services. That's just a real fact. And the thing that came to mind, I guess it's been 15 years ago or so, I thought, when I heard that Jackie Onassis had died, that was a big indicator moment to me, because I said, well, wait a minute. If anybody on the planet could have had the ability to stay alive with money, it would have been Jackie Onassis. I mean, she would have had the ability to stay, to buy anything, any service imaginable to extend her life. But wasn't it
well, she had that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
lymphoma? Yeah.
And if you get something like that, or pancreatic cancer,
Yeah.
or whatever, you're pretty much done.
You're pretty much done. Yeah, you are. So.
And it doesn't matter how much money you have.
No, but in 10 years from now, it may matter if you have enough money to buy a rather complicated set of personal cell replacement therapies and stuff.
I hope we can. I'll tell you one thing that's kind of, with this universal health care. I was engaged for a while to a Canadian general.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he, it's a neat guy. He's back in Canada now and remarried. His wife had died, but he was very, very bitter about the Canadian universal health care, because he said that the way that it was set up, that it didn't matter how much money you had or what your position was or anything. You were just a number.
Yeah.
And it took him over 6 months to get an MRI for his wife's ovarian cancer. And by the time that she got the MRI, it was too late.
Oh God, how?
And then he asked for a transfer to, I guess it's England Air Force Base in Florida.
Uh-huh.
So he begged, to get out of Canada to try to get her treatment.
Save her, yeah.
And so they got to England, and then, she was in a wonderful hospital and everything, but, at that time it was everywhere.
Yeah.
So he said, God, Diane, universal health care is just the worst, because whether you have money or whatever, you can't spend it. And they make it illegal for doctors, to see clients and, get special treatment and whatever.
Yeah, making it illegal to have a private practice. Now this is beyond
They
sane,
make it illegal to have a private practice, that's right.
Right.
And England is pretty much the same way. It's a mess. But I really think that's exactly what Barack Obama, has in mind, is the great leveler.
It is. He wants the lowest common denominator for everybody.
He does.
On healthcare, and it'll be transportation where you can't drive this because you don't pay the big we're not going to let you have a bigger car because you're an offender. Oh, dreadful.
Or
Absolutely.
You'll pay a big carbon tax.
Yeah. Just
to drive your car, and in fact, I read a thing the other day that I think it was Charles Krauthammer, who's one of my favorite, and he kept saying, "Why does he keep talking about the rich?" And then he says it with such disdain.
I know. He does.
He says it's like, so many people have, worked so hard to, attain a certain level of comfort or whatever. and he doesn't say, words like advantaged or people are sort of economically, you know, in a higher position. It's rich, and it's said with huge disdain. So it doesn't bode well.
What do you think? What do you think happened in the public psychology that allowed for all this to happen? One argument is that it was all this cumulative guilt that's supposed to have that had an impact. I don't really understand. I don't understand what the psychology was.
Well, I read a thing that was very interesting. It talked about the worst prejudice of all now is really ageism.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask a focus group of, how do you feel about electing a black or a Hispanic or an Asian or a woman or whatever. But electing somebody over 70, the prejudice was huge.
Yeah.
And I think, although, John McCain will probably outlive all of us, just looking at him, even on television, it was kind of like the Nixon-Kennedy,
Yeah.
The way that, as Marshall McLuhan wrote about, the medium is the message.
Yes.
And I think this is very much the medium is the message. And all of a sudden, there's this tall, strapping, handsome black man, and then there's this kind of this poor guy who can't even raise his arms above his ears. His wife has to comb his hair because he spent so much time in captivity, and they broke his arms and legs, and so he had that kind of penguin walk, and I think people saw that as being old.
Yeah.
And I think what really, more than a collective guilt over, what we've done in slavery, it was kind of like, oh my God, we can't elect an old person, and especially an old person who's, walks like he's somewhat infirm.
Yes.
And I think it was a huge prejudice. I really do.
Some wag wrote somewhere that if you had John McCain and Barack Obama on American Idol, Barack Obama would win without no matter what the talent was, and that that young surge of voters, that is the MTV / American Idol audience, and it is slightly frightful that American Idol is like the most popular TV show there is, but it is, and that's.
Yeah, that and Dancing with the Stars.
I know.
It's funny. One thing that I heard though, after it was all over, this huge surge of young voters and everything, that they didn't vote in any larger numbers than they did during the Bush election.
I heard the same, yes, that it wasn't.
They still didn't vote.
Right.
What really did in John McCain was, people his own age and middle age, and that it's just there still is, a great prejudice about age.
Yeah.
And then through his coloring, he came across as very, washed up because he's so fair skinned, and he didn't photograph well.
Whoever his handlers were, they failed dramatically to teach him how to look relaxed in a teleprompter. In the first months, it was just awful, him reading teleprompters. It was just dreadful,
He used to look down at little note cards.
Yeah.
And, that was awful. And then when they put Sarah Palin on, they had such rife between the campaign.
Yeah.
Part of the campaign hated her, and then part loved her, and there was the whole issue of the clothes,
Right.
and the clothes from Saks, God forbid.
Yes.
And it was just a mess. And then he had like Howard Dean only imagined.
True. That's right.
Only imagined. And I have a friend who's a PhD, and he's a forensic psychologist down at in Pueblo, the state hospital. And he talks about he still gets all these missives from personalized them on the website. So it's like,
Yeah.
Dear Doug, and keeping in touch with them and all that. So, he really was a genius in a way. Small contributions,
Yeah.
for the way he communicated with them.
True.
And look at him going on Leno the other night.
Yes. And I signed up, just to find out, what they were up to, and they perpetually send me emails, from the Obama people, going,
Right.
they're still, they've got a new cause campaign every 5 days, trying to wrestle up money, and so.
Well, he's going to have, I think for, the next campaign, he'll have a war chest that no one will be able to touch.
Yeah.
And then he's doing a tax structure to where no one will pay taxes except for the rich.
Right.
And so who's going to vote for a Republican?
Mm-hmm.
Because 90% of the people will be tax-free.
Right.
And that's pretty seductive.
Yes, it is the hand that feeds you mentality, which is very hard to overcome with people who, whose only concern about their financial position is if they have money for lotto tickets. It's like, okay.
No, I don't see a good future at all for the Republican Party unless he makes some huge missteps. But he may be making them now.
I think he is, as all the pundits today said, by failing to address the economy and visibly showing up on Leno and other things like that, he's putting himself at high risk, high political risk, and.
Well, I think so, and they can't even get any lieutenants, to serve with Hillary Clinton or Timothy Geithner for some reason, and they're just, they can't even fill the positions.
I know
So
people are
I
very
think-
gun shy to be in those positions.
I think so too. There's got to be a reason.
Yeah.
And so if he makes enough mistakes, the tide may turn. But I don't know.
But if
I
he-
think by the time he loses all his political capital, we may have universal health care and his tax package in and all that. So, I don't know.
Well, the next congressional election, if somehow the Republicans can get in at least the House side, you can start putting the brakes on all this. But I think just from the way it's being handled now, it's on an accelerated crash path.
Yeah, there was. I started watching CNN again. I told you I couldn't.
I know you could
watch it
stomach
for a
any
while
more
without-
CNN. Yeah, right.
without the urge to, throw a shoe through.
Yes, quite.
Television and stuff. But now I can watch it again, and they're really going after him. And
Are they?
had that NPR thing. I think I told you about it. That they talked about who's best to lead the country, and it
Yeah.
was 43% to 43% between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
That's a seismic shift.
Truly is, because now this, at least on the Fox poll, it says the popularity is about 60%, but the actual confidence in the country was down to 53% negative today, and
Well, his popularity is still high.
yeah, his is
But
for the moment. Yeah,
It was about Congress.
Right.
Who do you think is best to lead us congressionally? And that's